This is lesson 3. In the previous lesson, we discussed global illumination, how to turn on global illumination, how to control the photons within our scene using the light properties. Just as a review, if we wanted to control all of the lights within our scene and all of the photons being casted through various lights, regardless of the number, we'd control them under Rendering, Render Setup, under the Indirect Illumination tab, the Global Illumination section, Light Properties. Now what we're going to look at in this lesson is how to control the photons being emitted just from one light. So we have our mental ray area light here. And what we want to do is we want to control the number of photons cast on a per light basis. So the way we do that is we go to the modifier panel for our light. Under the Mental Ray Indirect Illumination tab, you can see we have that it's already defaulted to automatically calculate energy and photons. So you see here we have energy, caustic photons, and global illumination photons. Caustics we're going to cover at another time. Now, what it's doing by having this automatically checked off is it's using these values here. Again, to control all the lights within our scene, and it's using these values to sort of guesstimate based on the size and the spacing of our objects and lights and our cameras what the mental ray rendering engine deems is the best option for calculating the amount of energy within our scene. Now if we want to control it on the per light basis, which is just this light itself, what we're going to do is check this off, go to manual settings, and now when we render it, we'll be able to control the amount of energy, which is the strength of our photon. So how powerful they appear in our scene. So say we drop this down to 5,000 opposed to 50,000, which it was defaulted at. You can see the strength of our photons has died down a little bit. We can go back and control the decay just for this particular light. And again, decay is how fast our photons die off in our scene. So if we want them to die off a little quicker, we raise the number, obviously. And the number of photons within our scene. And just as a review, if you want to get more realistic lighting, it's best to match an actual reference, like a photo of the type of lighting you like from a scene. And then you tweak these different values accordingly. Now, the one area, again, when you check this on and we go to our render setup, now this is a shortcut for checking off render setup here. The values that are still active are our top values, which are our maximum sample radius, which is the size of our photons, and the maximum number of photons per sample, which is how many photons we want blended, which we covered in our last tutorial. So these are still active, but when we check this on, our light properties are deactivated. Now if we add more lights within our scene, and on those lights automatic calculate photons is still on, it will go back and use these default light properties. So to sort of review it, if I increase my energy and I render that out, and I might pause accordingly, to sort of speed up render time from time to time. You can see I can still control my maximum sample radius. So these are the size of my photons, which is 1. So if I bring this up to 3, you can see even though I have manual settings selected, it still takes into account those values. If I increase now you see how my scene is a little noisy? If I increase the number of photons within my scene, just like we did before in our last tutorial, you'll see it begins to smooth out the results. But you get much greater control. And whenever I'm going to light my scene, the scenes I do for my own personal work, I always do the manual settings options. And I sort of tweak these accordingly so I get a lot nicer. You can see my shadows are a lot sharper, my colors are a bit brighter. And again, you can control the intensity of the lights themselves. Now, one other area I'd like to go over that I didn't cover in the last tutorial was the multiplier. Now, this multiplier doesn't affect any of the number values that are within integer, decay, caustics, or GI. What it does is it multiplies the overall intensity of your final solution based on whatever your values are. So right now, if I have it set to 1, it displays pretty much whatever the values I type in there. If I type in 0, what it'll do is it'll be like multiplying all of these values times 0. So what you'll see is you'll sort of get more of a direct illuminated scene, which is like if we had no global illumination whatsoever. If I make my multiplier 2, you'll see that we should get a lot more intense scene. Opposed to if we just went with 1. Sort of space these guys out. So we have our 0 here, which is our multiplier on 0. And then we have our 1. Then you can see with 2 it's a lot more intense. It's the same. Again, the options are all the same. They're just the overall final our overall final scene, or the intensity of all these options, are just controlled by this multiplier. So these are how to control on an individual basis. In the next tutorial, what we're going to do in lesson 4 is we're going to discuss final gather.